got Kaede Baker. Good morning, Kaede.
Good morning again.
Exactly. Good morning again. Get that frog out of your throat. And joining us as well to help with the questions and, of course, to enlighten all of us, we have Ikemesit F. Young. How are you doing?
Very well. Good morning.
Fantastic stuff. Now, Lagos, do remember that you can contact us in the studio by calling us up, and the number to dial
Is 0144899981.
You can also send us messages to pensions. Mrs. Adedeji, whenever people think of pensions or hear of pensions, a cloud of confusion tends to come over some people's faces. People understand exactly how the pensions are set up in Nigeria. We do know that it is now statutory. And we do know that since pensions were made statutory, perhaps that's what's contributed to the most recent news talking about a rise in the general pension fund. But let's start from the beginning. Can we talk about sort of PENCOM, what it does, how it works, how pensions function in Nigeria?
Okay, so I think the confusion usually is because people don't generally pay attention to pensions. And that's because it's something that you think about when you're much, much older. And so when you're young and working and everything is fine, you're not thinking about it, so you're not paying attention. PENCOM stands for the National Pension Commission, and they're the regulator for the scheme.
Okay.
They came into being in the Pension Reform Act of 2004 and they amended in 2014. So they're in charge of enforcing the act and also all matters relating to pensions in the country, anything relating to pensions and retirement benefits, any laws, PENCOM has a right to enforce. So they do things like issuing licenses, guidelines and regulations regarding pensions. They inspect operators. They issue benchmarks and standards around which the scheme operates. And there's quite a lot involved in regulating the scheme in Nigeria.
Okay. Very interesting stuff there. Thank you. I like that you mentioned in the beginning that most people tend not to focus on pensions until they get a lot older. But while they're in their working prime, so to speak, people don't really think about that. Why do you think that perhaps this should change, or do you think it should change? Why should people pay more attention to pensions?
Well, the way the scheme works, responsibility for the pension actually lies with each person. And so it's important that you pay attention to it. And the way the scheme also works, it's a contributory scheme, so you're expected to save towards your pension. But very often people are not saving enough, they're not saving at all. And so at the end, there's some expectation to receive a certain amount that isn't really realized. And very often the operators get blamed for the shortfall, whereas people are actually responsible for their pensions. And the best time to save is when you're young and you're hard and you're working, and you're in a position then to save. You do not have bills that come with old age, and you're more active. So people need to pay attention when they're young, not as they get old or older.
Fantastic. We've already got calls coming in. Do call us up on 0144899981. Feel free to share whatever thoughts or questions that you have with us. We will start taking your calls from right now. You can also send in messages to us on our WhatsApp number, which is 0809 4440981. So I think we lost one of our calls. But just going now into the contributory part of the pension. We know that for people who are in paid employment, your employers are meant to remit or to contribute at least to your pension payments. Now, I do know again that people earlier on today in Business Express, we also mentioned the pensions, and it sort of came in there. There are issues where employers are not remitting pension. They're collecting it because now it's statutorily required. It's mandatory. But what happens when your employer doesn't remit that? How are you even aware, or how do you know for sure that they're remitting your pension? Because people do get very concerned. We get a lot of announcements of the huge size of our pension assets, the pension fund in Nigeria. But are people really benefiting from this? Because we also have memories or images of people standing in long queues waiting to collect their pension.
Yes.
What do you say to all of this?
Okay, in the first instance, it's important that the mode of deduction is understood by the employer. So you should see the debit come out of your pay slip or your payroll, and so you expect that some remittance has been made. Now, what would normally happen is once it hits the PFC account and your administrator has credited your account, you'll get an SMS alert. So there are various ways in which you can actually check if your employer has been remitting. Again, it comes back to paying attention. So your administrator would issue you with statements. There are statements online. There are SMS alerts. So there are various ways. Now, what do you do when you find your employer isn't remitting? It's important that we engage our employers. I think sometimes maybe out of fear of speaking against your employer, a lot of people, actually do not make an attempt to engage their employers. What we have found, because as administrators, we also actually go around to ensure that these remittances have been made. Now, what we find also with some employers is they take their time. They intend to remit, but they take their time. So again, it's important, if you're paying attention, then you can work with your HR or your finance department to make sure that remittance is done on time. And yes, you do have employers who knowingly do not remit. Now, that really is the crux of the matter. And again, it's a matter of engagement. I believe that if employees can work with their employer, the employer will eventually remit. So there could be delays. Maybe an employer is having financial challenges, and also the onus is on the employee to also get the employer to commit in writing to the fact that they are owed those pensions, they are owed those contributions. So there's a lot that
A theme song in Nigeria for a while now.
yes, that option is there. The regulator now has offices in all the geopolitical states, and the opportunity is there to just walk in and report your employer. So there are various, and I think the important thing is for us to take action.
Take action, very, very key there. Lagos, if you're just tuning in, you are listening to Smooth Breakfast, right? We are talking about pensions. We're talking about the contributory pension scheme, and trying to understand a little bit more how pensions affect us and how each and every one of us has a responsibility to make sure that we've got that saving for when we do stop working, or even before that, as we're going to see a little bit after we take this break. So keep listening. We are Smooth 98.1. You can go and watch what's going on in the live feed right now if you go to youtube.com/Smooth 981 FM Lagos. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Excellent start. Thank you very much. It's very nice. It's very nice. Okay, so going next, and I want you to talk about PENOP, exactly what PENOP is, so people understand, and then we'll now look at the contributory scheme and how it works. And we know that people are able to take out of their pensions before retirement age. How does that work? Somebody had sent a message again during Business Express to say, oh, but people that are taking out, this is a 25% or so that you're allowed to take out, then they are going to Canada to go and live their new life. What happens to that 75% that's sort of left behind? How is that managed? Yeah. Can you still take out of that when you do eventually retire, but maybe somewhere else in a different country? What happens if you are self-employed and it's not your employer that's paying that in? All these little details that a lot of us really don't have a grasp on. We just sort of have big headlines. And we're like, okay, when they say, oh, you want to invest that pension, no, don't touch our because people, I think there's just a genuine fear and mistrust.
And understandably so. Yes, because the past hasn't really been very good. So, and you can only judge, the future based on the experiences of the past. So it's understandable, but it's a lot better, a lot better than it was. There's more structure, more orderliness, and it's more transparent now.
And it seems like one of the strongest sectors that we have at the moment.
From a regulatory and job performance perspective.
It is. So if we could even maybe touch on why we think that's happened, why we think it's got this, why it has more trust than any of our other sectors, why it seems more transparent, why the regulation there works as opposed to everywhere else, all these things, just so we can kind of feel it, because I think it'll then get people calling in and asking questions. Even the role of what the contributory pension scheme is all about, and just trying to understand how each and every one of us have an active role to play in making sure that we have our pension saved away for a rainy day. Welcome once more, Mrs. Adedeji. Okay, so we've got more questions. Let's start from PENOP. What exactly is PENOP? Because you're the president of this organization, and people would like to know exactly what that stands for and what it does.
So PENOP is the Association of Operators. So it's made up of the pension fund administrators, the pension custodians, and the closed PFAs. Okay. So we work together for the growth and development of the industry. And so from time to time, we have events, and we meet regularly to discuss on essentially building consensus, as I said, or towards development of the market.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Thank you very much for that. Lagos, you can call us up as well, don't forget.
Yes, you can call us on 0144899981, and if you also want to reach out to us on WhatsApp, the number to do that is 0809-444-0981.
If you'd like more information, we have also tweeted out links to a couple of stories, very recent stories with regards to the pension, so make sure you search with the hashtag. Good morning, Sociable, is that you? Very good question. Thank you very much.
Scheme will then provide structure. The regulations will provide a structure surrounding the ability to join the scheme. Of that, self-employed members of the public have already joined the scheme because the law allows you to now. But under the guidelines, incentives will be introduced that will encourage self-employed, low-income workers to join the scheme. The question was specifically about, say, market women.
Yes.
And you find that at that income cadre, there's a high need for cash and liquidity. So one of the incentives that will be built into the micro pension scheme will be an ability to withdraw, which will be more flexible than those in the regulated scheme. So there will be incentives that would make it interesting and convenient for them. So that is definitely on the drawing board. We expect to make progress with it over the next few months.
Okay, thank you very much for touching on issues of liquidity, ability to withdraw. Now, it is an incentive for people who do require liquidity, especially market women, slightly lower income earners who do need to be able to access money that maybe, they have saved for a rainy day, but their rainy days sometimes come a little sooner than one would imagine. But going back to what already exists in terms of the original 2004 Act and even the amended 2014 Act, it does allow, doesn't it, for people to be able to withdraw in a certain capacity before retirement age. Can you please explain this aspect to us a little bit and how that works and why you think that was included in the Act?
Okay, so it really was an attempt to provide some level of comfort for people who have been working for years and then find themselves in a situation where they're not earning a regular salary. Okay. So if you've been out of work for 4 months and you haven't found another job, you're allowed to withdraw up to 25% of what you've saved. And that is something that it's drawn on. It's used quite a lot by people. So when you then get another job, you then begin to save again. So that's actually available. Now, if you've also saved additional voluntary contributions, you're allowed to draw 50% of those savings and only once in 2 years. So there's also an opportunity because we mentioned earlier people not saving enough. So if you do save additional contributions towards your retirement, you're allowed to take some of that before
once
retirement.
In 2 years.
Once in 2 years, yes.
Very interesting. Ikaba-san, I see you just thinking very serious thoughts over there. What is running through your mind?
I was looking more at Cardi and thinking, I thought I saw a light, a light bulb just light up on his head. So, first off, ma'am, thank you very much for joining us again. And I think at this point, I should just make a special shout out to Susan Oranye, the wonderful executive director of Executive Sports, and observers agree was less than fitting for our purposes. from my perspective, that there seems to be so much innovation that probably part of the problem as to why people aren't exactly paying attention to it is because tweaking, and we are reworking the system ever so often, that oftentimes it's tough making sense of where we are right now. And I know that there are still there are still innovations that are currently being worked on by the regulators and by interested operators and actors like your organization, looking around the multi-fund structure and all of that. Do what are your practical tips for the everyday Nigerian worker in terms of how to keep up with what in terms of education to help us, stay on top of our pension.
Very much. It's a good observation you made in terms of the innovation and the changes that are going on. I think you find that it's if you look at banking, for instance, that is hundreds of years old. The pension industry is 11, 12 years old. So it is work to be done. And yes, everything that's been done has been in the interest of the pension, the customers in favor of holders, and it's all been towards improving what we have on ground, making it more effective, more fit for purpose, more available, and expanding coverage. So it's been towards just making the scheme better. In terms of tracking what's going on, I would say first of all, people need to stay in touch with their pension fund administrators. And you'll find with all PFAs, they have websites, email updates. But again, very often people do not email addresses, so that proves a challenge. Sometimes people change employment and they do not even tell their administrator, and the administrator is trying to reach them through a previous employer. So that creates another break in communication. So to the fact that this scheme really responsible to pay attention. So there's a lot of information on your PFA website. There's a lot of information on PENCOM website. And so there are just so many ways in which you can track the development.
Stuff. Thank you so much for that. We do have messages coming in this morning. Let's see if we can get to some of these messages in just a bit. But before we do, so Lagos, you're out there listing the different pension fund administrators. So essentially, if you want to join this contributory pension scheme, which we have PENCOM, that is the sort of the overseer of everything, you can tell
Fed PFA.
Fantastic. And when you do that, if you are going to be changing employment, you really should let these people know. You must
let them know. Yes.
If you're suddenly unemployed or you've left employment, you must let them know.
Yes.
Okay. And if you decide that from here on out you want to be self-employed, you should indicate that.
You should indicate that.
Okay.
Because then you can still contribute, but then your contributions come in as voluntary contributions,
okay.
because you're no longer under the regulated.
We got a message back, boss.
Good morning. I would like to ask you why a contributor cannot access the savings in form of a low interest loan, which he can pay back over a period. Right now, people from banks exorbitant rates.
At exorbitant rates.
I think the most important thing we should always remember is that this is a pension scheme.
Okay.
The primary objective is to make available funds and we're looking, understandably so, at balances sitting there, and we can't access it, and we have all sorts of needs right now. But really, that objective to put people in financial comfort when they retire is not negotiable. So you will find that, yes, even the law, it's even written clearly in the law that you cannot borrow against your pension funds. However, there is a provision, there are arrangements being made to still remember what we said about all the changes and innovation.
Very
That's another
interesting.
possible future innovation. And again, it's understandable why that is there, because a home is a significant part of your retirement as well.
Yes.
So you can sort of connect that to the objective of the scheme. But ultimately, it's about retirement, and so it's not available for you to borrow.
Break. When we come back, it'll be about 10 minutes more of this discussion. So if you have questions, if you have comments, get them in very quickly. Remember, the number to call is 0144899981. You can send us a very quick tweet. Just use the hashtag Link81. And of course, there is our WhatsApp number as well, which you can comment on.
I know that a few times on Freshly Pressed we've talked about the fact that I think over the course of towards the end of last year, some folks in the National Assembly, the funds under the CPS being a ready form of okay, but it's for infrastructure and developmental purposes, yes. But I know it's a dicey question, and so I just wanted to ask before.
Economy will
We'll move.
to us, because they're more, so we will benefit.
Of
Indeed.
course.
So
So it's
for
about the
us,
structural.
that PENOP, we recognize that, and we're in full support of that. However, our position, the position of the law and our regulator, is that it has to be done. These monies belong. Time to collect these monies, it has to be available. And so to invest in infrastructure, what we as operators have requested for and continue to request for, and again, as I said, it states as such in the law, is that it has to be done in a structured manner. And so there have to be instruments. There have to be of projects backed by instruments with adequate security to manage and mitigate risks that are associated with infrastructure, to such an extent that we can invest and be.
There's one time I talked about that. How about investing, like the toll gate, and let me strengthen toll gate so that everybody can pass know that I'm paying this is investment. Because if it's like that, everybody that is paying pension who can see their investment, like, okay, so and I pass this toll gate, I know that pension is making money. That's it. I've been investing in road infrastructure now. I feel that's what comes to my mind. And when you mention infrastructure, I just say, let me just say this. I don't know wherever it falls within.
Okay. Okay, Abdul. Okay, let's have a response to that so other people can also call in. Is that okay? Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Adedeji. So pension tollgate. How about that?
Yes, thank you very much, Abdul. Fantastic idea. The sort of projects that we would love to get involved with, but we need certain things to be in place before we come in. We actually come in right at the end. So there's a lot of work that has to be done before we come in. So we need project developers. We need the government to give the concessions. We need laws around concessioning. We need investment bankers to create the instruments. So there's a lot of work that has to come in. We then come in. When all this is ready, we then come in and then invest. So, but until all of that is in place, we are waiting. But we are ready. We are willing. And right now we've had talks with various groups towards putting structures like this in place so that we can like Abdul said, have our own targets.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for that. Still lots of messages now flooding in on our WhatsApp. Cruz asks this. He says, first of all, thank you for making this special session happen. I didn't take pensions very seriously until my mother retired, and luckily for her, her pension was set up, it was functional and reliable, and I can testify that the 25% access that is before retirement is true because I've actually done that. And I'm also hopeful that the voluntary contributory scheme becomes live very soon since I'm no longer an employee. So can you please shed some light also on the new four-way opportunity being marketed? He's talking about the multi-fund structure. Okay.
Mention that even employed person, you can actually contribute to the scheme. So please don't wait. You can contribute now. Don't wait for the formal launch of the micro pension scheme.
Especially if you already have a pension fund administrator because you were employed, so you already have an account that you can pay into.
And even if you don't, walk into your choice and open one. And opportunity for RSA holders to invest in 4 different types of life cycle funds, and it gives you the opportunity to match risk return profile to your portfolio. This is a global the first fund, which we call the Fund 1, is a fund that is elective, so you have to choose to go into that fund. That fund has the highest risk return profile, and it's a fund that is available for anybody 49 and below. But you have to elect to be in that fund. So the Fund 2 is also for people below the age of 49, but it has a lower risk return profile. So what the 4-fund structure has done, it has given RSA holders the opportunity to choose between portfolios. It also means now they can opt for years to go. So you're ready to take the risk and get a higher rate of return.
Okay.
The third thing it does, it provides diversification for factors as well. Helped to improve the scheme.
Thank you very much for that. I'm just picturing such a golden retirement for myself in the future. I'm like, okay,
it is looking good.
I can see what's going on. I can see it. In very quickly, even though we just have a couple of minutes left. Follow from the I sent in a message saying management and returns that they get for contributions invested. It's difficult to pick a PFA just based on information around the size of the funds managed by the PFAs. Interesting.
Yes. Very valid question, and a very reasonable one. PFAs actually do have their returns on their websites.
Yes.
And so anyone who's interested and willing to do the research, if you go to websites, you'll find all the returns, and then you can make your comparison.
Do some digging.
Alternatively, you can call in. I think if you are interested and you have maybe a bunch of PFAs, what their returns are from time to time. So yes, I like the question, and I think the onus is on ABRS pay attention to.
Pay attention. It's been a watch phrase